silent type of father as described by Fielding, Richardson, Smollett, and Sheridan, is now hardly more likely to find a place in literature than the original advertisement of Messrs. Fairlie and Pontifex's pious country parishioner, but the type was much too persistent not to have been drawn from nature closely. The parents in Miss Austen's novels are less like savage wild beasts than those of her predecessors, but she evidently looks upon them with suspicion, and an uneasy feeling that le père de famille est capable de tout makes itself sufficiently apparent throughout the greater part of her writings. In the Elizabethan time the relations between parents and children seem on the whole to have been more kindly. The fathers and the sons are for the most part friends in Shakespeare, nor does the evil appear to have reached its full abomination till a long course of Puritanism had familiarized men's minds with Jewish ideals as those which we should endeavor to reproduce in our everyday life. What precedents did not Abraham, Jephthah, and Jonadab, the son of Rechab, offer? How easy was it to quote and follow them in an age when few reasonable men or women doubted that every syllable of the Old Testament was taken down verbatim from the mouth of God. Moreover, Puritanism restricted natural pleasures. It substituted the Jeremiad for the paean, and it forgot that the poor abuses of all time want countenance. Mr. Pontifex may have been a little sterner with his children than some of his neighbours, but not much. He thrashed his boys 2 or 3 times a week, and some weeks a good deal oftener, but in those days fathers were always thrashing their boys. It is easy to have juster views when everyone else has them, but fortunately or unfortunately results have nothing whatever to do with the moral guilt or blamelessness of him who brings them about. They depend solely upon the thing done, whatever it may happen to be. The moral guilt or blamelessness in like manner has nothing to do with the result. It turns upon the question whether a sufficient number of reasonable people placed as the actor was placed would have done as the actor has done. At that time it was universally admitted that to spare the rod was to spoil the child, and St. Paul had placed disobedience to parents in very ugly company. If his children did anything which Mr. Pontifex disliked, they were clearly disobedient to their father. In this case there was obviously only one course for a sensible man to take. It consisted in checking the first signs of self-will while his children were too young to offer serious resistance. If their wills were well broken in childhood, to use an expression then much in vogue, they would acquire habits of obedience which they would not venture to break through till they were over 21 years old. Then they might please themselves. He should know how to protect himself. Till then he and his money were more at their mercy than he liked. How little do we know our thoughts! Our reflex actions, indeed, yes, but our reflex reflections. Man, forsooth, prides himself on his consciousness. We boast that we differ from the winds and waves and falling stones and plants, which grow they know not why, and from the wandering creatures which go up and down after their prey, as we are pleased to say, without the help of reason. We know so well what we are doing ourselves, and why we do it, do we not? I fancy that there is some truth in the view which is being put forward nowadays, that it is our less conscious thoughts and our less conscious actions which mainly mould our lives, and the lives of those who spring from us. Chapter 6. Mr. Pontifex was not the man to trouble himself much about his motives. People were not so introspective then as we are now. They lived more according to a rule of thumb. Dr. Arnold had not yet sown that crop of earnest thinkers which we are now harvesting, and men did not see why they should not have their own way, if no evil consequences to themselves seem likely to follow upon their doing so. Then, as now, however, they sometimes let themselves in for more evil consequences than they had bargained for. Like other rich men at the beginning of this century, he ate and drank a good deal more than was enough to keep him in health. Even his excellent constitution was not proof against a prolonged course of overfeeding and what we should now consider overdrinking. His liver would not unfrequently get out of order, and he would come down to breakfast looking yellow about the eyes. Then the young people knew that they had better look out. It is not, as a general rule, the eating of sour grapes that causes the children's teeth to be set on edge. Well-to-do parents seldom eat many sour grapes. The danger to the children lies in the parents eating too many sweet ones. I grant that at first sight it seems very unjust that the parents should have the fun and the children be punished for it. But young people should remember that for many years they were part and parcel of their parents, and therefore had a good deal of the fun in the person of their parents. If they have forgotten the fun now, that is no more than people do who have a headache after having been tipsy overnight. The man with a headache does not pretend to be a different person from the man who got drunk, and claim that it is his self of the preceding night, and not his self of this morning, who should be punished. No more should offspring complain of the headache which it has earned when in the person of its parents, for the continuation of identity, though not so immediately apparent, is just as real in one case as in the other. What is really hard is when the parents have the fun after the children have been born, and the children are punished for this. On these his black days he would take very gloomy views of things, and say to himself that in spite of all his goodness to them, his children did not love him. But who can love any man whose liver is out of order? How base, he would exclaim to himself, was such ingratitude! How especially hard upon himself, who has been such a model son, and always honored and obeyed his parents, though they had not spent 1/100th part of the money upon him which he has lavished upon his own children. It is always the same story, he would say to himself. The more young people have, the more they want, and the less thanks one gets. I have made a great mistake. I have been far too lenient with my children. Never mind, I have done my duty by them, and more. If they fail in theirs to me, it is a matter between God and them. I, at any rate, am guiltless. Why, I might have married again and become the father of a second and perhaps more affectionate family, etc., etc. He pitied himself for the expensive education which he was giving his children. He did not see that the education cost the children far more than it cost him, inasmuch as it cost them the power of earning their living easily rather than help them towards it, and ensured their being at the mercy of their father for years after they had come to an age when they should be independent. A public school education cuts off a boy's retreat. He can no longer become a laborer or a mechanic, and these are the only people whose tenure of independence is not precarious, with the exception, of course, of those who are born inheritors of money, or who are placed young in some safe and deep groove. Mr. Pontifex saw nothing of this. All he saw was that he was spending much more money upon his children than the law would have compelled him to do, and what more could you have? Might he not have apprenticed both of his sons to be greengrocers? Might he not even yet do so tomorrow morning if he were so minded? The possibility of this course being adopted was a favorite topic with him when he was out of temper. True, he never did apprentice either of his sons to greengrocers, but his boys, comparing notes together, had sometimes come to the conclusion that they wished he would. At other times, when not quite well, he would have them in for the fun of shaking his will at them. He would, in his imagination, cut them all out, one after another, and leave his money to found almshouses, till at last he was obliged to put them back, so that he might have the pleasure of cutting them out again the next time he was in a passion. Of course, if young people allow their conduct to be in any way influenced by regard to the wills of living persons, they are doing very wrong, and must expect to be sufferers in the end. Nevertheless, the